The remedy. The remedy. The remedy. Welcome to the Remedy Podcast. This podcast is a project of WEBB Squared, a North Carolina nonprofit that works to increase wealth for Black businesses through connection, network, and opportunity. Our host is Stephanie Terry, the Executive Director of WEBB Squared, and our co-hosts are Associate Director Rinnie and myself, Mashallah Salaam. I am the Media and Production Specialist. In this podcast, we hope to bring consciousness to the racial divide and speak on emerging new narratives about race. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you will enjoy the podcast.
Hey Stephanie, how are you today?
Good. It's Podcast Tuesday. Woo woo!
You're in a chipper mood today.
I am. I'm excited. We moved into this new office. But hey, wait, hold up. Who's we?
My name is Rinnie
Rinnie.
and I am the Associate Director of WEBB Squared.
And who we have to my lovely left?
My name is Mashallah Salaam, and I am the video editor and the podcast producer.
And she owns also Afro Future
Productions.
Go ahead. She's a WEBB Squared entrepreneur. And I am Stephanie Terry, and we are The Remedy. This is our first podcast. We are so completely excited. So check it out. We've never done this before, but we do know how to talk.
Yes, we do. We talk all the time.
We talk freaking all the time.
Yes, we do.
And the other thing that we're so excited about, this is our very first office space.
Yeah, we just moved into our office space today. We are located in Pittsboro, North Carolina at the plant. Do you want to talk a little bit, Stephanie, about what the plant is?
Yes, so the plant is this like really cool, hippie, funky, eco village community. And we are sharing an office with Abundance NC, with Allison, who's the ED, and they do all kinds of stuff, right? They got the Pepper Fest coming up. They do this thing called a death fair. We need to talk. We're going to be talking about some death.
Okay.
We're going to talk about.
We're going to talk about death.
We need to talk about death. It's a part of life, right?
Okay. Well, I mean, if we don't have a remedy, we're going to have.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, so we're in this like, I can't even describe this room right now, but it's like views and screened in porches and pine floors, and it's just really cool. I'm excited about working here. Aren't you?
Yeah, I look forward to coming here every day.
Yeah. Are you going to eat blueberries?
I'm going to eat as many blueberries as they'll feed us.
So anyway, let's talk about the remedy. First off, why are we doing this, Rinnie?
Well, we just have so much fun talking about, surprisingly enough, like race and race amity and equity and abundance and unity. And we just decided we would just take our conversations and throw them out to the universe, because that's what people seem to do now. They take their conversations and make podcasts. And so the remedy came to me in a walk one day. I was walking through the woods along the river, and I thought, I've been kind of like for a while thinking to myself that, you know, racism, white supremacy, that it all feels like an illness to me, an illness that just reaches deep into the soul of every living person on this earth. I'm sorry, but I really do think that we're all infected. And this is the pandemic that we need to really be working on curing. And I think that some of us, especially for white, we don't even know how pervasive, you know, white supremacy is in our soul. And so in our work with WEBB Squared, which, do you want to tell people what WEBB Squared stands for?
Wealth through entrepreneurship for Black businesses. So we're an incubator, excavator, but go ahead, keep talking.
So in our work with WEBB Squared, we have what we call conscious conversations that we take into businesses to talk about like racial equity and diversity within the workplace. And we take our entrepreneurs in to meet, various folks to talk about how we can create programs together that will help, further race amity. And so we just decided that we would take this podcast and it would just be one of our conscious conversations that we have and just see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's great, the way you described it.
Yeah.
So for me, when Rinnie approached me about doing a podcast, I was like, okay, I'm gonna date myself. I was like, well, okay, are people really listening to podcasts like that? But yeah, they are. So I was just like, okay, that would be cool. Because I think we have some really cool conversations.
We do.
Right? And then when she came up with the title, The Remedy, I was like, holy smokes. Like, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Because now we get to share with you all about some of these conversations, these like deep conversations that we're having. So, for our opening podcast, initial podcast, what are we calling this? Season 1, episode 1?
Season 1, episode 1, the title, the one with the Statue of Liberty.
Yes. So we're going to talk about, so here's the thing, and let me just give a shout out to Dina Hayes Green, REI, who first started emerging the true stories around how we got here, how we came to be as Americans. Stories I had never heard of in my life. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You mean all this time, what? Like, what?
Yeah,
So
there does seem to be in our culture just so many stories that don't get told.
yes.
Or they get told in such a way that you don't get the full picture. You don't understand that there's a deeper meaning behind the stories than what we are taught.
Well, they just tell us lies,
That's right.
right? Just straight out lies. And so when I was like sitting in my first Racial Equity Institute training, I was like, why didn't I learn this like never? Not in grade. Why am I like 35? Why am I like 45? Finally like learning these stories. And it's for a reason, because if we knew the stories, right? The true stories, we surely wouldn't settle for what we're getting.
Yeah.
We surely wouldn't. And more than likely, we'd probably be more united than ever. Now, not everybody, but enough of us to like really demand change. So these stories are incredibly important. The true stories, the real narratives, not the, can I curse?
You can curse.
Not the bullshit stories they tell us.
The whitewash stories.
Yeah, the propaganda.
Yeah.
But like, what really happened? So we feel like if we start talking about these stories together with our different perspectives, then maybe we can begin to emerge some new stories and some new strategies and some new relationships that will help us solve what I say is the biggest problem of the 21st century, or the 21st century, right?
Yeah.
And that's race and racism.
Yeah.
Like this. Oh, Kim, here comes your quote. I'm about to drop it.
Go for it.
Kim Pevia, Lumbee, organizer, historian, mother, daughter, community facilitator, healer, just badass Black woman. She said it, and I'm going to say it this way. I'm going to say it exactly how she said it. She said, we do not have to live in this white man's imagination. What does that mean for you, Mashallah?
I guess like from what I've learned in school about colonialism and out of school about white supremacy, especially in this Western world, like America, United States of America, white men have created this, I guess, structure that we just follow blindly.
Yes.
And it doesn't work for everyone.
You got it.
And so by, I guess, living in their imagination, like we didn't have a say in how things should be for everyone and for us, for people of color. It's just what they wanted.
Yes, literally. Like this whole, well, I haven't lived anywhere else, so I'm going to refrain my assumptions and perspectives to the United States. But this is like their imagination. Like they made this up. I don't know what to say. They made it up, Rinnie. And we live in it.
And we don't even, I mean, we just grow up indoctrinated in it. We don't question it because we aren't taught any other perspective. I think there is some emerging narratives that are happening, and you see it in the controversies of, the current controversy of critical race theory, for example. Like people are pushing back that, they're actually teaching about these stories and stuff in schools. And so we are getting a little bit more conscious of it, and there are like emerging narratives that are being taught, but there's still a lot of pushback because it feels like they're going against the grain of of this culture that thinks that we all have to think this one particular way. And we're trying to push back against that a little bit and say, no, let's open up our perspective and get other viewpoints and other.
Yeah, it's like, first off, they made up this story. They made up race. They made all this shit up, right? And then in order to maintain like everyone just in blind obedience to it, give or take, there has been, I shouldn't say it that way, because there has been plenty of people that were not obedient to this story. We wouldn't, so I don't want to discount all of the sages and warriors and, leaders and just ordinary people doing extraordinary things throughout history. So I don't want to say it that way. But the bottom line is, that this narrative that we're all going by, this narrative that we're all going by is like, totally constructed. And in order for it to be maintained, they have to control the narrative, right? They have to keep these myths, lies, and propaganda going. Mm-hmm. And now they're doing it by any means necessary. Mm-hmm. There are all kinds of ways to manipulate so that, who's they?
I think the illness is so pervasive that they is everybody. I mean, there's just so much we don't get and so much we don't see, and there is a prevailing narrative that they want us to see. And so you look at the media, you look at culture, there are things that are lifted up and there are things that are not. And I mean, it's complicated. It doesn't necessarily like,
I don't know. I said who's they because if my husband Michael was here, he would say, who's they?
Like for me, I always thought of they being the 1%, like the people that own basically everything. And yeah, I do agree about everyone playing a role, especially like people who benefit from the work of enslaved people. So I guess that would be my idea of they.
So I don't know. I asked it, and now I'm thinking about it. So they for me is anyone that is completely comfortable with this arrangement. Just like whether you're benefiting from it in some form or fashion, and I think we all are, right? We all, but you're okay with that. Like when you learn about the truth, or a whole nother way of the perspective of looking at how we got here, it's like you're okay with that. That's who I think they is.
And I think that this is a good time to look up the Statue of Liberty story.
Yeah.
And the way that it was taught to me in my growing up was this was a gift from France to celebrate the immigrants coming over, and that we were the land of the free, and bring us your tired, your poor, your hurt, and we were the Statue of Liberty represented that everyone who came to the shores would have an abundance and a prosperous life. Yeah. That's how I was taught to think about the Statue of Liberty.
What about you, Mashallah?
Do you
know the story of the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, I actually heard a little bit about the actual story from this documentary that I watched a while ago with my parents. I believe it was called Hidden Colors, not Hidden Figures like the movie, but Hidden Colors. I think the producer is Tariq Nasheed. And when I first heard that, should I wait for you to reveal? So I heard from them that the statue was originally a Black woman to represent the freeing of enslaved people in America. And that was very shocking to me, along with many other things that they revealed in the film. But that's just something that we never learned in school. And I feel like that definitely should have been taught in school.
Yeah, so I first learned about the true story of the Statue of Liberty 3 years ago. Maybe right when I was 49 or 50. First off, just think about that. All this time. And I'm from New York, born and raised, visited the Statue of Liberty plenty of times. And I didn't even know to ask to think that there was anything other than what I had seen with my own eyes and learned in school. But so I was at a conference in Tennessee, and Dr. Joy DeGruy was giving a presentation, and she shared the story of the Statue of Liberty, and how when she went to the statue to visit, she asked the tour guide, "Let me see the chains." And the tour guide was like, "What chains?"
Yeah, the tour guide didn't even know. Yeah. And he was giving tours.
Yeah, so anyway, long story short, I don't want to hijack Dr. Joy's presentation, but what she shared was amazing. So the Statue of Liberty was conceived by this French guy, and I don't have my notes in front of me, and I'm not even going to butcher his name. Eduardo something. Labouille.
Great French, Stephanie.
You have to say it. You change your voice. Anyway. So apparently he's known as the father of the Statue of Liberty. And he first imagined the whole concept of the Statue of Liberty in France, because he was this big abolitionist. Yeah. And he was also a huge fan of the United States. He really liked the whole idea of democracy, and but he was a big abolitionist. And so the original purpose for the Statue of Liberty was to commemorate the Emancipation Proclamation, the ending of slavery. Y'all need to look this story up. Google the true story of the Statue of Liberty.
You know what I thought was kind of interesting is after you told me the story, I did look it up, and the story is out there, but it wasn't until you talked about the story that I even would have any idea to go look it up.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're taught these narratives as kids in school growing up, and that is our truth.
Right.
That's how we view the world. And if we don't share these narratives, if we don't share little bit the pieces of history that we find out with each other, and it changes. Like, our friend Dave Gold always says, it turns the jewel just a little bit. We turn that jewel, we can, like, our consciousness expands, and we get like a bigger, fuller picture of like this world and how we see it and the perspective that drives it.
Yeah, it changes everything. And you said something that when you didn't know to look it up, you didn't look it up.
That's right.
Right? And then when you heard about it and you looked it up, here's like this whole world, it's everywhere. So it's kind of like we don't know what we don't know, And then the things that we do know, we probably should question how we know them. And we probably should ask, are they true? Because a lot of, especially talking about race and racism, a lot of the things that we believe or think we know are just like completely false, like just wrong.
Yeah. And this is a pervasive problem across the board. It's not a Black person's problem, it's not a white person's problem, or Latino. It's just like all of us, have had these stories told to us in certain ways. Yeah. And it's like this driving force of narrative that says, white is better, and it's these systems of power that we've created to protect this white supremacist kind of like worldview. It's so pervasive, and it just reaches way deep into our collective souls and collective unconsciousness. And as you said, Stephanie, if it's all like socially constructed and it's all made up, and maybe this is just me feeling too optimistic, but we can then socially construct something else. We can come together collectively to change the narrative in such a way that something that you say to me all the time is that there's a plenty of abundance out there for everybody. So why is it that certain people do not have, while other people have so much that they just amass it and it just sits there?
So that's like a whole nother thing that we're going to get into on one of our podcasts, because, that still has to do with like what we're talking about, emerging narratives, belief systems, the programming that we've undergone. But what we really want to, first off, we want you to, don't believe us, like look up the story. Like everybody has a phone. Like a phone is like a computer, right? It's like a little mini computer. In between looking at your social media, Facebook or whatever, look up the untold story behind the Statue of Liberty. It's like truly fascinating.
And it's in Wikipedia.
It's everywhere now.
Yeah, the story is there.
Yeah, we're not breaking breaking news. We're just
but it's shocking, like how old we are when we hear the real story. And why can't we hear the story in school when Mashallah has got an advantage of us because she's, how old are you?
24.
24, and she's heard the story. I'm 50. I didn't hear the story until I was 50.
Right, me too. So here's the other thing. Think about it. If you had a person or a source, and you found out that something that they taught you was not, or told you wasn't true, right? And then you found out something else that wasn't true. And then you found out something else that wasn't true. Would you then begin to question everything that you learned from this person, or would you really?
Yeah.
I would. You'd be like, because, so far you're like 3 for 3, right? So what I'm saying is that as, we become more conscious about the real history, right? Or the history from perspectives other than being white and rich and male, right? As we become and emerge some of these stories, it's like, I'm starting to question like everything I believe. Like seriously, like I don't take anything for granted. You know, like, okay, this is the story, but is it true? You know, who said, from whose perspective? Why, where did I hear this from the first time? Why do I have such strong feelings about it? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And that's called like critical thinking. That's actually called thinking.
Critical.
It's just thinking, right? And especially now, I mean, you know, I call this time that we're living in the zombie apocalypse, right? Because think about it. You know, you got all this information out. You have people intentionally, like entities, countries, whatever you want to call it, intentionally creating false information and putting it in places, like going after you to give you false information, right? So like thinking skills and understanding that in this day and age, the chains that can like really trip us up are in our minds. Like it's this mind is the battlefield right now, you know, and it's all about how can we manipulate? How can we get people to believe? Because once you get people to believe, if you control their mind, you control their actions, their bodies, right?
So I have a question, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Like, we are, you know, in this podcast going to be retelling stories and reframing and reclaiming and looking at the histories. Why do you think that this is important in the work we're doing to work with entrepreneurs and Black entrepreneurs and building business here in North Carolina?
Because for so many reasons. First off, there's like all kinds of stereotypes and beliefs around Black entrepreneurs that are like totally not true. Like totally, right? And then there are stories about us that like are true that nobody knows, right? First off, this is not like a new thing. Black people, we've been doing business since before the 5,000 years of written history. You know, we've been business people. And so we need to remember that, right? And then there's something incredibly empowering about knowing the true history of Blacks in entrepreneurship. Like there's so much. I mean, I could talk to my husband, Michael, and he can tell me stories about, he grew up in Southern Pines, about the town in Southern Pines where it was completely, Black people had their own grocery store, radio station, taxi cab, I'm sure, what is it, the juke joint, you know, schools, they had their own doctor. Like, this is not, why don't we know? And if we knew that, right, we wouldn't act like it's such an anomaly when we do it now.
Yeah, sounds like Black Wall Street.
Yeah, it was like Black Wall Street's everywhere.
Yeah.
Because why? Because we had to. We had to. You know, so I hope that answered your question.
Well, it does. I guess I'm just wondering, like, what do you think when we don't lift up these stories?
Or ask Mashallah.
So what you were asking is like why, or how are these stories important for Black entrepreneurs to hear? I think that it's inspiring because it shows that it can be done. It has been done for many, many, many years, even way before slavery, like you had mentioned, Stephanie. I think that's really important also to talk about the history before slavery.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of the times people tend to talk about after, but we don't realize there's like just a vast amount of like knowledge and history that can really help us to make us proud of who we are.
Yeah, and it's like the same reasons, like, okay, so the same reasons why, like, you know, Columbus and what are some other, Sir Isaac Newton and all of these people, trailblazers throughout history. Why do white people enshrine them? Because they're heroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it makes them feel good. It's pride, right? You're like, hey, look what we did, and look, we did this, and we can do more. It's human.
Mm-hmm.
Lifting up your ancestors and the people that came before you and the legacies that they left for us, right? That's what it means that's what human beings do. I mean, it is, and so this whole, intentional suppression or just denial of Black Americans, the history and the contributions and the genius and it's gotta stop.
Yeah, I just feel like Mashallah, you created that beautiful video of, was it Mark Dean? Like, I've never heard his name, but he's like a pioneer in, technology. And we just don't lift these things up. We regulate our African American brothers and sisters into sports and entertainment. But we don't talk about their innovation. We don't talk about their achievement to science unless it's someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
And why? Why?
Because those narratives don't support a white system, power structure.
You got it.
White system power structure.
You got it. That's exactly it, Rinnie.
Yeah.
That's why I could rock with you.
I hope you're going to rock with me for a really long time.
Yeah. So how we got to tell people, first off, do we have a Facebook page?
I will be for this podcast.
All right, we'll have a Facebook page. We got an Instagram.
We're going to have a Facebook page. We'll have Instagram. We are going to be on Patreon. So if you decide to become a Patreon supporter, you will be able to sit down with the three of us once a month and talk with us, ask questions, and rock with us. Once a month, live stream and personal. And so there'll be information about that coming out as well. We have a lot of fun plans in the works for this podcast, so just stay tuned.
Be prepared to hear shit you ain't never heard before. That's all I wanted to say. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Like, what did you say, Mashallah? There's like a whole history of African genius that happened way back. I'm so sick and tired of sob slave stories.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I'm not watching another. I said, I don't want to see no more 12 years a slave.
Right.
I don't want to see, because we're way more than that. So we're going to be lifting up stories from history. We're going to be lifting up stories of real live entrepreneurs that we're working with, that we admire, that hopefully will come on our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be sitting down with some experts, people that actually study what we're talking, because this is our opinion.
But we want experts on the show.
Yeah, we're going to get them on here. But if you want to, I like opinions. I do. Yeah. So look, every Tuesday we're going to be making a podcast. So check us out, because we are going to talk about the remedy. We got the remedy, y'all.
Wow.
That's it.
That's beautiful.
All right.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.
This has been a joint podcast of WEBB Squared and Afro Future Productions. For those of you interested in learning more about our work at WEBB Squared, you can find out more at webbsquared.org. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is our conscious conversation. We hope you will subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. Join the Remedy Membership Forum on Patreon to join us monthly for our members-only discussion. That's it for today. Until next week, thanks for listening. What's underneath the situation you don't realize. So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy.
The remedy.